My name is Marlo Quinnland, and they thought I'd take the scraps and fade into the A crumbling farmhouse on the outskirts of Pine Hollow, Montana, was my inheritance, while my sister, Seline, walked away with a family company, a gleaming lakefront condo, and the unspoken approval of everyone who mattered. Be grateful, they told me, their voices dripping with condescension. Let Seline handle the legal stuff. But the ink on our parents' will was barely dry when contractors showed up at my doorstep, waving papers I'd never seen, my name quietly erased from what was rightfully mine. Then I found the box in the attic, a leather-bound relic that turned Celine's pristine inheritance into a web of evidence. One question haunts me still: how long had they planned to strip me of everything and leave me with nothing? It all started in a lawyer's office, a sterile box of a room that smelled of stale coffee and fresh ink, the kind of place where grief was reduced to paperwork. The air was thick with rehearsed sympathies and unspoken judgments. Seline sat 2 chairs away, legs crossed, her tailored navy dress as crisp as her composure. She didn't look like a woman who'd just lost both parents. She looked like she was about to close a multi-million-dollar deal. The lawyer, a balding man with wire-rimmed glasses, droned on about the estate being split evenly. Seline would retain the Wexler Property Group shares, a legacy built by our grandfather and polished by our father. Her husband, Carlton, would oversee the lakefront condo, its value swollen since Dad's retirement. And me? I got the farmhouse, a sagging relic at the edge of nowhere, its value measured in sentiment, not dollars. No one made eye contact when the lawyer announced my share. Not him, not Seline, not Carlton, whose lips twitched with a smirk he didn't bother to hide. The silence that followed was heavy, like fog rolling off the river. Well, Seline said at last, snapping her folder shut with a manicured hand, at least you'll have space for all those rescue cats you're always talking about, Marlo. Her voice was light, almost playful, but it cut like a paper's edge. The room chuckled, polite, hollow laughter. No one objected, not even me. My hands were steady as I signed the deed, but my stomach churned with a sour mix of resignation and shame. Arguing wouldn't change anything. They'd already decided I was the quiet one, the harmless one, the one who'd take the leftovers without a fight. I left the office with a manila envelope and no ride home. Celine's sleek SUV peeled out of the parking lot first, Carlton's sedan close behind. I stood alone under thickening sky, the clouds over Pine Hollow heavy with the promise of rain. Small town, small people, Dad used to say when the neighbors pried too much. Now I understood. The walk to the bus stop was long, my boots scuffing against the cracked sidewalk, the envelope tucked under my arm like a shield I didn't know how to wield. 3 days later, my phone buzzed just after dawn. I was in the farmhouse kitchen, patching a ceiling leak with duct tape, when Celine's name flashed on the screen. Marlo, she said, her voice warm as a practice script, just checking in. I know the house is a lot. If it's overwhelming, I can handle the deed for you. You know, legal stuff. It's my world. My fingers, sticky with tape residue, froze. A drop of water splashed onto the warped linoleum. You want to take the deed? I asked, my voice flat. Only to help, she replied, smooth as silk. You can still live there, of course. Paperwork can be tricky, and I'd hate for something to slip through. I should have hung up, but I didn't. I mumbled I'd think about it, her tone lingering like a bad perfume. She wasn't my sister in that moment. She was a saleswoman closing a deal. By the time I arrived at the farmhouse, the sun was sinking, casting long shadows across the sagging porch. The screen door screeched like a wounded animal. Inside, the air smelled of old pine and neglect. Cracked kitchen tiles, dust patterns where furniture once stood, a single flickering bulb overhead. This house had been alive once. Grandpa tinkered in the barn until the stars came out. Grandma's bread filled the walls with warmth. Now it was a husk, but it was mine. I stood on the porch that night, arms crossed, watching the tree line sway under a rising moon. The deed in my hand felt like a lie, my name in black ink, but no weight behind it. Was this all I was worth? A footnote in a family portrait, framed in cracks and cobwebs? A cold wind rattled the loose shingles above. I pressed the deed against my knees, letting the silence wrap around me. I didn't cry or rage, I just sat, the weight of their expectations pressing harder than the chill. They gave me this house because they thought I'd say thank you and disappear. But this place had stories they hadn't read, secrets they hadn't buried deep enough. The knocking started near midnight. At first, I blamed the wind, Old houses like this groaned with every gust, loose boards tapping like restless spirits. But this was different, steady, rhythmic, coming from the attic. It wasn't random creaks, it was a pattern, like someone knocking softly from inside the walls. I lay on the lumpy couch, wrapped in Mom's old cardigan. Its faint lavender and coffee sent a fragile tether to her. I didn't sleep. Fear, of what, I wasn't sure, kept me still. Not ghosts, exactly, but memories, regrets, things left unsaid. By dawn, the knocking stopped, but its echo lingered in my chest. Whatever was up there could wait. I wasn't ready to face it. Morning brought a new kind of dread. Among the pile of unopened mail on the kitchen counter, a crisp envelope with the county's seal stood out. I tore it open, expecting a utility notice or condolence card. Instead, it was a blade to the gut, 3 years of unpaid property taxes, $5,600, with a foreclosure date circled in red, 60 days away. My hands trembled as I set the letter down under the flickering bulb, its light as unreliable as the house itself. They knew, Seline, Carlton, the lawyer. They'd handed me a ticking bomb with a smile, knowing it could detonate my claim to the land. The phone rang again. Carlton's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again. Persistent. Marlo, he said when I answered, his voice slick as a used car salesman's. I figured you got the tax notice. We're prepared to absorb the estate's liabilities. Walk away, and I'll have a check cut by sunset. Absorb? I asked, voice steady despite the quake in my spine. The land's part of a zoning reassessment, he said. Long-term redevelopment plans. You're sitting in the middle of it. There it was, the truth, wrapped in corporate jargon. I wasn't family, I was an obstacle. I'm staying, I said, and hung up before he could respond. The silence that followed was louder than his words. That afternoon, I sat at the dining table, laptop humming, legal pad scribbled with half-formed plans. The county website was a maze of dead links, but I found a tax relief section and left a voicemail at the assessor's office. This wasn't just about saving the house, it was about refusing to let Seline and Carlton erase me from our bloodline. By nightfall, the attic's knocking returned, more insistent, like a heartbeat in the walls. I stood at the base of the attic stairs, flashlight in hand, staring at the hatch. Something waited up there, and it wasn't just dust. The wind died around 4 a.m., but I didn't sleep. Curled on the couch, a half-cold mug of coffee on my stomach, I replayed the knocking in my mind. It had purpose, a rhythm that felt alive. At dawn, I gave myself 20 minutes to change into jeans and lace up Mom's old work boots, the ones I hadn't worn since her funeral. The flashlight flickered, but a fresh battery steadied it. The attic ladder groaned as I pulled it down, dust raining onto my shoulders. The air up there was thick, musty, undisturbed for years. Cardboard boxes sagged, furniture hid under yellowed sheets, cobwebs clung like lace. I followed the knocking's memory to a far corner, behind a leaning wardrobe and rusted tools. A wooden panel jutted slightly from the wall, hollow when I tapped it. I pried it open, revealing a leather-bound box, small as a showbox, tied with faded cloth. I carried it downstairs like a relic, setting it on the kitchen table under the morning sun. The smell hit first, old paper, motor oil, a trace of Grandpa's pipe smoke. Inside was a folded letter, schematics, and a worn notebook, all in his looping script. The letter began, "To whoever finds this after they forget me. This house holds more than memories, it holds potential, not for profit, but for independence." My throat tightened. The schematics, labeled Electromagnetic Conversion Unit version 3.6, were meticulous, with notes in the margins. The notebook held calculations, sketches, even receipts for parts from cities I'd never heard of. This wasn't junk, it was years of work, hidden, erased. A memory clawed its way up, Mom, months before she died, on the porch with untouched soup. "Why didn't you let me fix this place?" I'd asked. She didn't hesitate. "You're a follower, Marlo, not a leader." The words had stung then, but now they burned. Legacy, she'd said later, a word that felt heavier now. I searched perpetual magnetic field resonance online, finding patents, articles, a 1984 forum thread about suppressed inventors and corporate buyouts. What if Seline didn't know about Grandpa's work? Or worse, what if she did? His final line echoed, "If they silence my voice, I hope someone finds these." I whispered aloud, time to make noise. Celine's help arrived days later, a contract for home improvements, buried in fine print that surrendered the house to property management. My sister had laid a trap, dressed in kindness. I called her, voice steady. I'm not signing. Her pause was sharp, her goodbye non-existent. I grabbed a Sharpie and scrawled across the contract, if I disappear, start here. Dramatic, maybe, but it felt right. At the county clerk's office, I verified my ownership. Still under your name, the clerk said, shrugging. Sometimes things get flagged. I took copies of the deed, filings, everything with a signature, and built a contingency folder with Grandpa's letter and schematics. They thought I'd vanish quietly. They were wrong. Wexler Property Group's headquarters gleamed like Seline herself, cold, polished, untouchable. In the lobby, Grandpa's portrait, him beside his prototype, was gone, replaced by Seline shaking hands with the mayor. Vision for the future, the poster declared. My hands shook, not with rage, but with clarity. They were erasing him. Back home, I found another notebook in the attic, its final entry pleading, if they silence my voice, continue. I started a document, timeline of concealment, logging every erasure, portrait, rebranded schematics, scrubbed website mentions. At the town hall, I hung Grandpa's photo above their agenda posters, a nail tapped in with my flashlight. An email arrived that night from a blocked sender. You should know what they're planning. Attached were Wexler Group memos outlining a maintenance default strategy to seize my land, calling me the girl, a formality. I printed 3 copies, one for the council, one for my files, one for the Pine Hollow Gazette's editor. The next council meeting buzzed with tension. I carried a thumb drive, my only weapon. Seline and Carlton sat up front, polished as ever. I stood before the moderator could call anyone else, plugging in the drive. The projector lit up with the memos, Grandpa schematics, and their rebranded version. Gasps rippled through the room. Seline claimed it was out of context. Then Thomas Adler, Grandpa's old colleague, stood. That's Antonio's handwriting, he said, producing a 1986 notarized letter proving the work was ours. The room stilled. I faced Seline. Now you know why I didn't sign. No applause, just truth settling like dust. In court, Judge Everly ruled in my favor. The schematics were mine. Wexler Group owed $127 million for unauthorized use. Celine's lawyers faltered. Carlton's charm crumbled. Outside, reporters swarmed. He didn't leave me junk, I said. He left me justice. Back home, I found Mom's letter behind a pantry shelf. I didn't protect you, she wrote. Your quiet was strength I couldn't name. I hope you found what your grandfather left. My hands trembled, but I didn't cry. Seline stepped down as CEO. Carlton's plans collapsed. I didn't cheer. It was consequence, not vengeance. I fixed the orchard fence, painted the mailbox, and started the Antonio Quinnland Legacy Grant for rural students. The farmhouse creaked, alive again. People asked why I stayed. They thought it was worthless, I said. But it held the truth. Marlo didn't just reclaim a house. She reclaimed a legacy and her voice. How many families silence someone to rewrite history? What happens when that silence breaks?